Hello everyone and welcome to ButteredGaming. I'm ButterToast III, and today I'm going to be showing off another one of my decks here. This is my mill deck revision 1 from the last time I showed you, and it's pretty different actually from the last one, and you'll notice my hand is hovering over here because you kind of get a nice glare on the card there. But you may notice from just Dark Slick Shores over here that it is a blue-black deck, and we have blue-black and gold blue-black cards over there. So I guess we can start with, let's just start with the lands, as is normally done, I guess. I don't know. Alright, so let's begin with 2 Dark Slick Shores here, and it is a blue-black. When it enters the battlefield, tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. So it's just in there for the blue-black, I guess. And I guess it's good early, but otherwise it comes into the battlefield tapped. So that's how that goes. Alright, so next we have, let's see what we can do here. 4 Drowned Catacombs, and it is a blue-black again. When it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped unless you control an island or a swamp, so that's not too hard to accomplish, I guess. Yeah, I guess it's not too hard, but anyway, there it is. Alright, so next we have our islands, and you're gonna notice that there's not a whole lot of them in here. There are 7. Alright, so lands are not wanted for, though. There are 24 total in the deck still. And next, actually, we have 4 Nephalia Drown Yards, which just give you a colorless, but the reason they're in here is because you can tap 3, a colorless, a blue, and a black, to tap this card, and then put top 3 cards of your opponent's library into his or her graveyard. So you'll notice this is a mill deck, so you can put those cards into the graveyard. Now this mill deck is actually kind of focused around drawing cards and using those draws to get your opponent to discard cards. So as you'll notice here, we have our swamps, and we have 5 of them, so there you go. And last but not least, we have a Temple of Deceit. I just drew this out of like a pack or something, so it enters the battlefield tapped, and then when it enters the battlefield, you get to scry 1. So I mean, it's not really drawing cards, but you do get to scry. I'm sorry, I can't talk. You do get to scry, and it is a blue and black, so I thought I'd go ahead and put it in. Alright, next let's look at our black cards, and as you'll notice I only have 1. It is a Geth, Lord of the Vault. It's a 6 mana drop for a 5/5 Intimidate, which isn't too bad by itself, but then you also can pay a swamp and then X to put target artifact or creature card with converted mana cost X from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control tapped. Then that player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So again, it's milling, and then also you can take cards out of their graveyard to use. So there's only 1 in the deck. I don't really get to use it all that often, but it's in there just for the fun of it. Alright, next I'm going to go ahead and look at the gold cards, because the blue cards have the most in the deck. There are 9 gold cards, and we're going to start off by looking at our Consuming Aberrations here. It's a 5-drop for a star, so its power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your opponent's graveyard, which is just pretty nice in this deck because you mill, of course. So then it's a pretty big card, and then whenever you cast a spell, each opponent reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals a land card and then puts those cards in his or her graveyard. So that's really nice, because if you play the spell putting their cards in the graveyard, then this guy kicks in and then they put even more cards in the graveyard. Then he just gets stronger, and then it's just really nice. Alright, so next we're going to look at Mind Grind, and it is a blue-black X, and you can pay X for each opponent revealing cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals X land cards, and then puts all cards revealed this way into the graveyard. X cannot be 0. Alright, so I don't know why you would pay 0 for that, just because, I guess. I don't know. But at any rate, if you have a bunch of mana on the field, even if you only have 4 or 5 mana, that's still 2 or 3 mana that they gotta be looking for in their deck. And then, trust me, if you've ever seen these in effect, especially later game, they really start, well, I don't know why, especially later game, but they really start taking out the cards. So anyway, next we have a Una, Queen of the Fae, and it's kind of hard for me. There you go. You can kind of see it's shiny. This is actually out of the vault. And it's a 6-drop for a 5/5 flying, which isn't too bad all by itself, but then you can also pay X and then a blue or a black, and then you get to choose a color. Target opponent exiles the top... Oop, I'm sorry. Exiles the top X cards of his or her library. And then for each card of the chosen color exiled this way, you get to put a 1/1 blue and black fairy rogue creature token on with flying on the battlefield. So again, just those fairies are good for blocking, especially if they have a deck with only 1 or 2 colors in it, and you can just get a bunch of them and block with them. So that is kind of one drawback with this deck, is that it doesn't really have a whole lot of creatures. So yeah, I address that with some fog banks later in the video. Alright, so next up we have 4 Pilfered Plans, and that's a 3-drop for top 2 cards of his or library of your opponent's library into their graveyard, which isn't too spectacular all by itself. But then you also get to draw 2 cards, and then as I said, this deck does focus on drawing cards, which is good for getting mana, other cards to discard to your opponent, and there's I have a playset of what is called Jace's Erasure, which I will show you later, and that also helps me a lot with the drawing. You'll see when I get to it. Alright, so next up we'll look at our blue cards, and I have the top set in my hand already. So you'll notice that there's a playset of Divination, and if you know what Divination is, it's a 3-drop to draw 2 cards, which is alright by itself because you get to draw cards, and then you also get to, again, get more either mana or other cards to mill your opponent. But the good thing with this deck is, again, the Jace's Erasers, and they allow me to discard opponent's cards for every card I draw. So that's nice. I have 4 of those, so if you get multiple of those, if you even have 1, this is drawing 2 cards for you and then discarding 2 cards for your opponent. And then if you have 2 Jace's Erasers on the field, it's drawing 2 cards for you and then discarding 4 cards for your opponent. So again, it builds up. So it's a pretty nice combo. Alright, so next is how I kind of address the problem with not so many creatures. I have 4 Fog Banks in the deck. It's a 2-drop for a 0/2, which isn't too great all by itself. It has Defender and Flying, so you'll use it for defending, obviously. And then the good thing about this card, though, is that it prevents all combat damage that would be dealt to and by Fog Bank. So basically it's there for a wall for you. You can just sit there, and if you have more than 1 in the field, it's pretty good for stalling out your opponent's attacks, because sometimes they won't have all that many cards. So next, we've got good old Jace Memory Adept here. It's a 5-drop for a Planeswalker with 4 loyalty tokens, or whatever they're called. I kind of forget what they're called at the moment, but his +1 ability is to draw a card, and target player puts the top card of his or library into his or her graveyard. So that's nice. Again, more drawing cards, especially if you have Jace's Erasers on the field, and then he also discards a card from your opponent. So kind of the point of the deck, mill deck, and then also Jace's Eraser, as I said, getting more of that mill, and then also you're drawing cards, so it just compounds on each other. And here's the guy that I keep mentioning. We've got a play set of our Jace's Eraser here, and it's a 2-drop to just put on the field. It's an enchantment, and whenever you draw a card, you may have target player put the top card of his or library into his or graveyard. So you draw a card at the beginning of your upkeep, so that's 1 right there. If you have 1 on the field, if you have 2 on the field, it's 2. And just as you keep going, I keep showing you all these cards that allow me to draw cards. So if you have these guys on the field, it's drawing more cards, discarding cards from them, then you have more cards for mana, or discarding more cards off of your opponent. So it's pretty good. I think it's a pretty good combo. Alright, so next we've got good old Mind Sculpt. It's a 2-drop, 2-drop. As you may notice, this guy is foil. The top one here. And then your opponent puts the top 7 cards of his or library into his or graveyard. So that's really nice because it's 2 mana for 7 cards off your opponent's library. Why not? I mean, it's a mill deck. You pretty much almost have to have that card in here. Alright, so next, kind of a new addition to the deck, we've got a Thassa's Bounty. It's a 6-drop for drawing 3 cards, and then the target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her deck. I mean, it's a little expensive mana-wise, but I drew them out of some packs, and I just decided I'd put them in. And the good thing about them, though, is also if you have the Jace's Erasers, you're drawing 3 cards, so they're going to be discarding 3 cards from this card by itself, and then also 3 more for each Jace's Eraser you have on the field. So that's really nice, too. And again, you're drawing cards, and that's kind of what you want to do in this deck. You just draw cards all the time. And let's see, so next we've got Thought Scour, a playset of that as well. This is a 1-drop for top 2 cards of your opponent's library into his or her graveyard, and then you also get to draw a card. So again, more drawing cards, more discarding cards, really cheap mana cost. If you've got Jace's Eraser on the field, they're going to be discarding even more cards, and then you've got more cards in your hand. And I just love that combination. I can't even handle it right now. Alright, so we're coming up on the last card in our deck here. And it's a play set of Tome Scour. So we've got another 1-drop, and then you're going to put the top 5 cards of your opponent's library into his or her graveyard. So again, really cheap mana cost, a lot of cards off the top of their deck. You're not drawing any cards in this one, but that's okay because it's 5 cards off the top of their deck from 1 mana. Why not? Alright, so that's going to be it for this video. I've got 60 cards in the deck. As always, see the description below for a list of cards specific to this video. If you want to see the most updated version of the deck, which may or may not be the same version you see in this video, you can go to MTGFanatic, and there will be a link to that deck in the description below. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully you'll come again next time.